Wait! You're under arrest.
No thanks, Dollface. I've already worn handcuffs.
I could shoot, you know.
How's it going, guys? True Warrior here. And today I want to talk about something I've been wanting to do for a while. And that is to do a character analysis on one of Resident Evil's protagonists, and my personal favorite, Rebecca Chambers. For those of you who don't know me, let me give you a brief background of my history with the Resident Evil franchise. Ever since I was a teenager, I've seen many friends and content creators I follow play these games, but I was never interested in the franchise due to A, not having an interest in horror back then, and B, not having the money to purchase games for myself. It was not until 2018 where I would get the chance to do so, with the first game that I played being Resident Evil Remaster, and holy cow, was in for a ride. The feeling of shooting zombies for the first time felt amazing. And I'll never forget the time I was scared to death with the scene of the zombie walking down to the mansion's kitchen. Hell, I even looked away from my screen to not get scared. After finishing Remaster, I got so excited that I made the decision to play the whole main story. Something that to this day I don't regret. During my first survival horror journey, there was one character that caught my interest fast, and that was Rebecca. Expanding my backstory a bit more, the character I first played in Remaster was Chris Redfield. In it, Rebecca's there to help him out when needed. Now spoilers, while playing Chris' story, I made the mistake of playing the game without headphones, which of course would lead me to not hear Rebecca scream when she gets attacked, and of course would result in her dying during my playthrough. Fearing I fucked up, I went to my friend's stream and asked him if Rebecca is supposed to die during the story, and well, let's just say there was an awkward silence. I felt so bad after finishing Remastered that another friend told me that she's in another game, and of course, I went to play Resident Evil 0, and despite its many flaws, I still enjoy playing it to this day. Resident Evil 0 made me appreciate Rebecca more as a character, and not to mention she's kinda beautiful, but that's a story for later. And I'm glad to know I'm not the only one who shares this appreciation of her. I've seen many people around the internet on how they came to love and accept Rebecca, like I did, as well as seeing other people who hate her and also find the character useless. However, as I came to learn more about her and about the Resident Evil community's view on Rebecca, I came across an article that was provided by Lord Google itself, which caught my eye. This article would talk about an interview about how the father of survival horror, Shinji Mikami, shared his opinions about the portrayal of women in video games, saying, "I don't know if I put more emphasis on women characters, but when I do introduce them, it is never as objects. In some games, they will be peripheral characters with ridiculous breast physics. I avoid that sort of obvious eroticism. I also don't like female characters who are submissive to male characters or to the situation they're in. I won't portray women in that way. I write women characters who discover their independence as the game progresses, or who already know they are independent but have that tested against a series of challenges." To which this is true regarding the nature of many of the franchise's main characters, such as Claire Redfield, Jill Valentine, Ada Wong, and the list goes on. However, in the same interview, Mikami also added the following: "If I had to name the woman character I most disliked in my games, it would be Rebecca Chambers. She's submissive, she's not independent, I didn't want to include her but the staff wanted that kind of character in the game, for whatever reason. I'm sure it made sense to them, and in Japan that character is pretty popular." Now this brought me many questions. Is Rebecca submissive and non-independent? Is Rebecca a character to dislike? Is she useless as some claim to be? This would lead me to write the script for this video, giving my thoughts on those questions and analyzing Rebecca as a character. Now before I begin, I want to clarify that I'm not trying to disrespect either Mikami's or anyone else's opinions, and this whole video will be my own point of view of the subject in hand. After all, as human beings, we are all entitled to different opinions, right? And while we're at it, I want to highlight two words from Mikami's interview that will be key for this analysis, which are submissive and independence. To be submissive is to obey or yield to someone else. When you are submissive, you submit to someone else's will, which literally you put your own desires lower than theirs. To be independent is to not be influenced or controlled by others in matters of opinion, conduct, etc., thinking or acting for oneself. An independent thinker, not subject to another's authority or jurisdiction. Also, for the purpose of this video, we will study Rebecca's main story during the events of Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil, the events between the end of Resident Evil 0 to Resident Evil that Umbrella Chronicles tells, the Japanese play Biohazard stage, and the animated film Resident Evil Vendetta. Fair warning, if you don't want to get spoiled, I highly recommend playing the games as well as watching the play and the movie. Trust me, they will be worth your time. With that being said, let's jump right into the video. Rebecca's story begins back at the Arklay Mountains, where she has her first assignment as STAR's Bravo team's medic. The team gets sent to investigate a series of attacks and murders in Raccoon Forest, and in their way they discover an overturned wagon that was transporting the prisoner, Lieutenant Billy Cohen, for execution. As the team separates to search for him, Rebecca later finds herself on the Ecliptic Express train. To her horror, its passengers have mutated into zombies. As the story progresses, Billy is found inside the train and offers Rebecca to cooperate with him to escape, to which she refuses at first, replying,
I can handle this on my own. And don't call me little girl.
Okay, Miss Do-It-Yourself. I gotta say, regardless of being in front of a criminal, Rebecca looks pretty chill in the situation, trying to do her duty as an officer as best she can, even though I'm pretty sure Billy would outmatch her in strength. As Rebecca continues to investigate the train, she bumps into a body that she assumed was dead, and the corpse turns into witches that attack her. Luckily for her, Billy comes to the rescue, shooting the witches off her until they flee, saving Rebecca in the process, with the rookie officer begrudgingly giving it a thumbs up as a sign of thank you. After saving her life, the train is reactivated, and with the attempt of stopping it, Billy once again insists Rebecca to cooperate with him, which this time she accepts, but gives the warning of shooting him if he betrays her. After derailing the train, they arrive at the Umbrella training facility. In there, while taking one of the facility's keys, Rebecca is attacked by a giant centipede where once again, Billy goes through a rescue by killing the giant bug. I really can't fault Rebecca in this situation since she had no idea a giant centipede was gonna come out of the blue, and she had nowhere to run or hide at that time. She could have whipped out her gun and tried to counterattack, but at that point, I think it would have been too late. Getting back into the main event, Rebecca is later attacked by an eliminator, where the ground below her breaks open and she barely hangs in there. However, she avoids a terrible fate thanks to Billy's efforts, saving her life yet again. Yes, I know what you're thinking. Right now, the only thing we've seen so far is Rebecca getting saved over and over again. But don't worry, it gets better for her, and in my opinion, it's where we see Rebecca shine the most. After Rebecca is saved, Enrico, her team captain, communicates with her asking about Billy's whereabouts. To Billy's surprise, she lies to Enrico saying she hasn't found him and she'll continue to look for him. This is where Rebecca starts to show signs of loyalty to Billy. Having her doubts on the charges against him, Rebecca starts to question Billy about what happened. Billy then shares his story about how his unit was operating under false information and was ordered to raid a guerrilla hideout in Africa, but instead it was actually a village full of people. Unwilling to go back empty-handed, their leader ordered the unit to attack the village. While Billy didn't mention this part to Rebecca, it is shown to the player's eyes that he refused to obey his leader's orders and was knocked out while the rest of his unit brought all the villagers to be shot. And on Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles, there's a file that contains details of Billy's past, where it's revealed further that he was wrongly blamed by the Marines for their deaths. With the file explained that it was due to a temporary loss of sanity, and later on he gets put on trial where he is found guilty and sentenced to death. Now, regardless of Billy never telling her that it wasn't his fault for what happened, we can see in this cutscene that Rebecca has a sense of justice. She believes in Billy's innocence. Thinking back at the definitions of both submissive and independent, Billy never influenced Rebecca into thinking that he wasn't the one who shot any of the villagers. She never submitted to Billy's will believing he's innocent, He told her what happened, and Rebecca came to a conclusion by her own, that he's not a murderer. Returning to the story, after getting out of the facility and through the chapel, they find a cable car underground. In here, Rebecca notices an eliminator on top of the cable car and pushes Billy out of the way as the mutant monkey was about to attack him. However, the creature gets a hold of Billy anyways, and then the two fall down into the waters below, leaving Rebecca on her own. I should note that after being separated from Billy, Rebecca is ambushed by a witch. Since the game gives us the option of killing it, we'll make it count. Score 1 for Chambers. At this point of the game, Rebecca wanders off alone through most of the factory, facing multiple enemies such as witches, hunters, and then she faces a tyrant mano a mano and defeats it on her own. Okay, if this is not being independent, then I don't know what to tell you. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. She didn't have help from Billy. She didn't have help from Enrico or anyone from Bravo team. No one! The Stars medic shot down a tyrant by herself and lived to tell the tale. Enough said! After her victory, she goes down the elevator and reunites with Billy, and together once again, they continue their adventure where they end up bumping into Dr. James Marcus, who later mutates into a giant witch. During the final boss fight, Rebecca notices that the mutated Marcus's weakness is sunlight and suggests to open the windows above. Yes, once again, she's an independent thinker. After Rebecca opens up the windows, she throws the magnum to Billy, who delivers the final blow to the mutated Marcus. Following their escape from the facility, Rebecca takes Billy's dog tag, which is a symbol of his soldier's death and makes Billy a free man. They each go their separate ways and this game's story ends. Now here's where the first line of questioning starts. Did Billy piggyback Rebecca too much in this game to the point where she's submissive, not independent, or useless? On the contrary, Rebecca really did prove to handle herself. She fought many BOWs, she fought a tyrant by herself, and shown in Resident Evil 2, she writes a report on the incident where she writes about Billy's death to stop a further manhunt on him, therefore saving Billy's life. She gave an innocent man the freedom he deserves. So far so good, right? Let's see what the other games tell us. Following the events of Resident Evil 0, Rebecca reaches the Spencer mansion where she ends up sleeping in one of the bedrooms, until one of her fellow Bravo team members, Richard Aiken, wakes her up. While navigating the mansion, they get attacked by a flock of crows. Okay, I know this doesn't have anything to do with, but I want to pause for a moment to get this out of my chest. Why do the crows sound like monkeys? Let's play that back for a bit.
Rebecca! Are you alright?
Continuing with the story, after scaring the crows away, Richard and Rebecca get ambushed by the giant snake Jan. At first they are forced to run away, but then they encounter the snake again in the library. During the fight, Richard pushes Rebecca aside when the snake tries to go after her. She hesitates to shoot the snake at first, but then aims for the lower body, making the giant snake spit out Richard. This part of her story is something that did bug me. Why does Rebecca act hopeless? Why did she transition from someone who can handle things on her own to someone who trips easily on a staircase? Perhaps she got traumatized from the events of Zero? It is shown that she started to have nightmares after arriving at the mansion, but the cause of those nightmares aren't explained. During her screen time in the game, they mostly show Rebecca as a helpless and an innocent person. Well, except in that part where she and Billy arrive at the facility entrance with Billy asking if she needed a bodyguard, which she responds,
No. Do you?
"You tell him, Becky." But other than that, I don't get why Capcom decided to take this direction with her. And this isn't the first time they would do that, but we'll get into that in a moment. Even Rebecca herself said that she hated feeling that way, and don't take my word for it, it's in the game.
I hated how hopeless I felt. Seeing Richard lying there, wounded. I had to be stronger. I had to fight, and I had to survive. No matter what happened, I'll prove I have what it takes to survive.
Poor Rebecca. You've been a terrible fate, haven't you? But don't worry.
Everything will be different in the next Resident Evil.
The night after splitting up with Billy, STAR's Alpha team is sent to rescue the members of Bravo team, to which its leader, Chris Redfield, bumps into Rebecca and an injured Richard inside the Spencer mansion. In this game, Rebecca is given a minor role as the side character during Chris's story, where she is mostly assisting him by treating his wounds. But despite having a secondary role, Rebecca once again gets key moments during the campaign. She takes care of Richard's wounds after being bitten by Jan. She doesn't hesitate to go fight against the enemies by herself or with Jill at the end of Chris's campaign. She goes out of the way to save Chris not only once, but depending if the player saves Richard with the serum or not, she also saves Chris from Point 42, using the chemical formula known as V-Jolt. Nice achievements, huh? Well... like I said earlier, the first time I played this game, I didn't get to see this scene because by the time I went upstairs to the reading room, Rebecca was already lying on the floor dead. But after playing Zero and playing this game for the second time, I think I could speak for everyone saying, what the f***? Why did Capcom do this to Rebecca? I know this game got released before Zero, but you mean to tell me that after making her fight zombies, hunters, and a freaking tyrant, by herself by the way, the writers make her crawl to a corner for help? Come on girl, you're better than that. To this day I'm still surprised they thought this would be a good idea for her. But it ended up what I think has been what many consider the character's biggest flaw during the franchise. Dude, I still had my questions while I was writing the script for this video trying to explain this problem. I've even had several discussions about the same topic with some friends and other people as well, walking around my room over and over just thinking about it, and after analyzing it for so long, I can finally back up Rebecca's sudden change by saying the following. Rebecca is a medic. Okay, hear me out. What's the common denominator that the other main characters have which makes them formidable combatants? Every one of them has had their proper training. Leon, Barry, Chris, and Jill had theirs from being an expert on weapons to having been taught how to use them by higher authorities. In Claire's case, she has her knowledge and experience on firearms thanks to her brother. However, this isn't reflected on Rebecca. Her task is to heal her fellow teammates. In the military, people select or get their roles assigned, being either mechanics, cooks, medics, etc. Those people may never experience combat and they would only learn the basics on handling a gun in case they are attacked. It is unknown how STARS handles their training for the people, but I strongly believe this could be Rebecca's case, which is also the reason why Richard was assigned to look after her during their missions when she first started being a part of Bravo team. Richard, having more experience in weapons, is there to back up Rebecca if she needs to. And while she's not the biggest marksman or fighter in the Resident Evil universe, she would be key in future events. In 2015, Japan released the play Biohazard the Stage. In this story, Rebecca would be one of the main protagonists alongside Chris Redfield and Piers Nivens. Sometime after the events of the Spencer Mansion and the destruction of Raccoon City, Rebecca continues with her education to achieve a doctorate in virology. 5 years before the current events of Biohazard, a T-virus strain spread across the city of Minnesota, and Rebecca will take part in its defense. In it, she ends up saving the life of police officer Tyler Howard and lets him know to aim for the zombie's head to kill them. Back at the present time, she will infiltrate a university as a science professor to investigate a series of cases the BSAA believed were related to bioweapons. Besides saving Tyler's life and her activities as both a professor and an advisor for the BSAA, we only get to see Rebecca in action once in a while, not to mention that she gets taken hostage a few times. But she is shown to have knowledge not only in the field of science, but also in history as well, when she explains the meaning of the museum's Irish giant to Piers and the university security guard, Posh Brown. Also, she somewhat still displays hesitation when trying to shoot. An example of this is when Lard, one of the university's students, turns into a zombie, tries to ambush her, and Rebecca freezes. However, she proceeds to kill him after giving a tearful apology, telling Piers that she doesn't want to kill if she didn't need to. And something I didn't mention during my Resident Evil 0 breakdown is that Rebecca is caring towards the people close to her and gets horrified when they turn into bioweapons. This is shown in a cutscene where she was shocked in finding Edward being a zombie and she was forced to kill him. This same characteristic is revealed in Biohazard the stage after her students were turned into zombies and she either watched them being killed or she had to kill them herself, feeling sadness and grief afterwards. I know this is just a play, but personally, I would have liked to see more of Rebecca. I would have preferred if she joined the final fight like she did back in the Spencer Mansion against the Tyrant. Or maybe I'm ranting too much at this point. Maybe I'm thinking, oh, she should have been the one to give the final blow to Mary at the end. But once again, Rebecca is not a combat expert. And here she pursues a career more of intelligence than fighting. But one may ask, if her role is just being smart, can she contribute to the Resident Evil universe by not using any physical strength to fight against bioweapons? Well, I do recall an old saying that goes by, knowledge is power, and that saying would be put to full use in Rebecca's final chapter. In 2017, Sony Pictures alongside Kadokawa Pictures and the Marsa Animation Planet would do a partnership to release the franchise's next animated film of its time, Resident Evil Vendetta. Taking place a few years later after the events of Resident Evil 6, Dr. Rebecca Chambers is first seen researching a cure for the animality virus developed by the film's antagonist, Gwen Arias, who's a major bioweapons dealer. Now before I continue, can we just take a moment to appreciate how cute and nerdy Rebecca looks in this movie? I mean, she was already cute back in Zero, but dude, her face, her hair, and those glasses are just the cherry on top. Just look at her.
Nothing at all, Professor Chambers.
And before someone does this, because this wouldn't be the first time that's happened to me, she was 18 by the time Resident Evil 0 took place, so don't you dare be calling the FBI on me!
FBI, open up!
I said no, you f***. Moving on. During her research, the institute where she works is attacked by one of Arias' associates, Maria Gomez, whose goal was to infect everyone with the A virus. However, thanks to a prototype vaccine she developed earlier, Rebecca manages to save herself and was later rescued by Chris Redfield and the BSAA. Having learned that the virus has similarities to Las Plagas, both Chris and Rebecca seek out Leon Kennedy for his help. However, upon their arrival, Leon refused to assist them, which led to both him and Chris to argue with each other until Rebecca stops their quarreling. She then reveals that Arias' virus is already within the bodies of people, but it needs to be activated by a trigger, and until they find the trigger, she states that both the living and dead are Arias' weapons. Having taken a sample of her vaccinated blood, Rebecca angrily tells both men that neither would be the type of person that sits around while the world dies and leaves to the bathroom with disgust. It was at that time that Arias' henchmen go and kidnap her. Now wearing a wedding dress, Rebecca wakes up to be confronted by Arias in his hideout, telling him what she has learned from the A virus. Afterwards, Arias then reveals his motives for capturing Rebecca, as she resembled his bride-to-be, Sarah, who died due to the US government ordering a bomb to be dropped on his wedding day. Planning to redo his wedding with her, Arias takes the ring from his deceased wife's arm and tries to put it in Rebecca's finger, but she resists him, which ends up in Arias slapping her. Using her blood, Arias injects what would be a stronger version of the A virus on Rebecca, leaving Chris only about 30 minutes to rescue and administer the antidote on her before the virus goes into full effect. Following his fight against Arias' bodyguard, Chris saves Rebecca, and with the assistance of the BSAA team and Leon's, they take down Arias and successfully administer the cure to Rebecca, saving her life in the process. With Arias gone, the team spreads the antidote across the city to cure the rest of the infected, and thus ending Rebecca's story in the Resident Evil franchise. At least I hope for now. So what do we learn about Rebecca's role in this movie? Vendetta takes a very interesting approach to her character. showcasing more on how brilliant she is than what Biohazard the stage or any other of the games did, and it's evidently proven in many cases. First of all, when she saves herself during the film's second zombie outbreak by using the vaccine she created, and it's further highlighted when Rebecca explains to Aries step by step about how the A virus activates.
Your BOWs can tell who they're supposed to attack. That's a good selling point for a weapon. Engineering them with that trait must have been difficult for you, but I know how you did it. There are 3 strains of the virus. One infects them. A second acts as a trigger. The third gives you the option of choosing who your target will be. A sort of inactivation virus. The vaccine. You mixed the base virus in drinking water.
I'm impressed. How did you figure it out?
I noticed a huge concentration of outbreaks around the Great Lakes, which just so happens to be a major source of drinking water. But they weren't planned by you. They happened by accident. It seems under certain rare conditions, the latent virus can activate without the trigger virus. Speaking of, the trigger virus is probably distributed through the air. By a gas. By themselves, these viruses either have no potency or they run the risk of activating on their own. But when combined, they become an effective, controllable bioweapon.
Impressive, huh?
Nicely done, Professor.
Now, for those who've also seen this movie, you might say, "Oh, but sure, she acts like a damsel in distress for most of the movie. She's so useless." Now, hold on there, buddy.
You're acting like a couple of selfish brats right now.
Let's jog the memory for the people in the back once again saying that Rebecca isn't a weapons expert. If you think about it, after the whole institute got infected at the beginning of the movie, she had to fight her way out with the only weapons available being a pair of scissors and a fire extinguisher to kill 2 zombies until Chris went to rescue her. As for her kidnapping, what if I told you that there was more than one reason Aries wanted Rebecca kidnapped? It wasn't just because she reminded him of his dead wife. She knew about the A virus, knowing how to trigger it and at the same time how to cure it, which can easily put Aries' product out of the black market for good. And realizing this, Aries used her own blood with the purpose of enhancing the A virus and making Rebecca's vaccine obsolete. Rebecca Chambers was a major threat to Gwen Aries. Also, remembering one of the key words at the start of the video, Rebecca doesn't submit to Aries when he tries to put the ring on her. Instead, she resists and rejects him. Finally, this is something I feel Rebecca doesn't get enough credit for. But who was the one that made the antidote to cure the infected? That's right, she did. The rookie officer that started as a medic manages to save the lives of millions of people, not as an agent, not as a BSAA's operator, but as a scientist. Rebecca Chambers is a hero by using knowledge to her advantage. Regardless of the weird writing she's been through, I think Rebecca has come a long way since her debut, and she accepts the fact that she doesn't fight bioterrorism with brute strength, which answers the question from before. Yes, Rebecca fights with her brain. She even states this during Resident Evil Vendetta.
That's a story. I used to be a medic in the STARS unit in Raccoon City. I guess in a way I've always been interested in medical science. Then one day I decided to make it my duty to stop people from abusing it.
I thought, here are these corporations run by scum preying on the weak. They're like a disease on humanity. I want to find a cure, same as Chris. The difference is, he uses his brawn, while I use my brain.
I believe some fans only dislike her because they hold onto the idea of Resident Evil being only about shooting zombies. Rebecca isn't portrayed that way with her refusal to kill. But let me remind everyone that in Japan, the franchise has a different name which goes by biohazard, and this means a risk of human health or the environment arising from biological work, especially with microorganisms. If we take this to consideration, Rebecca indeed complies to this definition. I would like to see her come back in a future game, not as a DLC character but rather in the main story. Maybe she can assist one of her teammates, or they can at least give her a gun so the player can shoot enemies while transporting some kind of important chemical sample to a laboratory or something. I was blown away when she was announced to be a playable character last year in Dead by Daylight's Project W chapter. Thank you, Behavior, but I would like to see more. Capcom, please make this happen, and please, no more dilly-dallying when writing her character. What do you guys think about Rebecca Chambers? I would like to know your opinions of her in the comment section below. If you guys liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe. Also, this is my first character study I've done, so any positive feedback will be most welcome. You guys take care. Hopefully I get to see you again, but until then, keep on smiling.